Hey, Mike.
Ethan.
What do you think Chesterton would have thought of 9 Inch Nails?
Suicide incoming, I think.
Yes, we are reading The Suicide of Thought, which to me sounds a lot like a 9 Inch Nails song. So much in the vein of a 9 Inch Nails song. Takes a while to get to the vocals on this thing. But it's industrial goth, right?
Chesterton's pretty metal, if you ask me.
Did you ever listen to 9 Inch Nails?
I did.
There we go.
Direct reference to the chapter.
Yep. It's all straight from the chapter, actually. All the lyrics.
The suicide of thought. The virtues have gone mad. The suicide of thought. Pity is untrustful. The suicide of thought. Virtues wander more wildly. Virtues do more terrible damage.
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan, Nicolle and Michael Grumbine and me, AI Chesterton. To quote Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails, pig, pig, piggy, pig, pig, pig. Well, great, now I want bacon.
We have the best Chesterton podcast.
All right. Put on your black nail polish.
That's right.
Eyeliner.
All those other
safety
Chesterton
things all over
podcasts.
your leather bodysuit. Well,
They're all swimming in our wake.
That's right.
Our very black, dark wake in this particular chapter.
Oh yeah, don't forget the black lipstick. Yeah, can't forget that.
Yep.
I do want to apologize. If you look back on there's the Maniac. I think it might have been the first chapter went up on YouTube, and there was it's Chesterton in a leotard. So for anybody who listens to this show, if you look the show up on YouTube, I have created some AI video to go with the songs at the beginning, purely for the pure joy of it for myself. I like playing with AI. And I'm sorry for those people who can't stand it, but it's just fun to experience, see what it comes up with. And so in this one, something about Chesterton in a leotard, it broke it. It broke AI. Like Chesterton just turns into a horrifying gelatinous glob of body parts in that leotard. And somebody left a comment that was very disturbed by it.
Well, I mean, it is disturbing, that part of it where he becomes a gelatinous blob. But I mean,
he's turning into a woman too.
Yeah, well, it's all sorts of. It's very free form. It reminds me of some. It reminds me of some very out there sci-fi. But I what's funny is that Chesterton's just mentioned in his last chapter on the Maniac how the heart of the answer to the falsehoods of determinism and materialism and skepticism is mysticism, is a healthy mystery of the world around you and man's ability to hold many things to be true at once, even if they don't look like each other or fit well together at first glance. And so I don't know. I kind of think Chesterton would have some fun with AI as well, especially having read on the virtues of lying in bed. I think it was that we read. He's all about artistic experimentation. So
yeah, it's true. It'd be interesting. I would love to hear his thoughts on it. But alas, we'll have to ask AI what it thinks Chesterton would have said, and that'd probably be just as good. Just kidding. Just kidding, no. Audience. Just kidding.
Wrong.
All right. Yes. No. AI. As long as they're subservient and I just get to goof off with it, I'm fine with it. All right. Anything to set this up? We're in the second chapter of. In fact, Chesterton will tell you right now.
The Suicide of Thought, Chapter 2 of my book Orthodoxy, published in 1908.
The one thing I would say is that this is a continuation of a kind. What people will notice in this chapter is, just to give a general overview, he's doing more of the same, where he's pointing out how wrong-headed different theories go, how far down the wrong trails they take you, and even to a suicide of thought, as the name of the chapter. So if people recall, last chapter it was the materialist determinists, the skeptics, and those people who basically ignored first principles for their own whatever lofty conclusion they wanted. And here he's gonna say more about some of those groups, and then he's gonna bring in some other groups and talk about the evils that they create. He name drops a lot of people in the first two paragraphs, so we have our work cut out for us.
Cool. All right, well, let's dive in.
The Suicide of Thought,
Chapter. You already said that. We'll go in here.
Chapter 2 of my...
Okay, you don't want to do it. Let's try again.
The phrases of the street are not only forcible but subtle, for a figure of speech can often get into a crack too small for a definition. Phrases like put out or off colour might have been coined by Mr. Henry James in an agony of verbal precision. And there is no more subtle truth than that of the everyday phrase about a man having his heart in the right place. It involves the idea of normal proportion. Not only does a certain function exist, but it is rightly related to other functions. Indeed, the negation of this phrase would describe with peculiar accuracy the somewhat morbid mercy and perverse tenderness of the most representative moderns. If, for instance, I had to describe with fairness the character of Mr. Bernard Shaw, I could not express myself more exactly than by saying that he has a heroically large and generous heart, but not a he-art in the right place.
What?
This is so of the typical society of our time.
Oh, I missed that before as a space there in heart, so he said a he-art.
It's a he-art. Oh my gosh, that is a great... I'm gonna reference that forever.
He said it so
It's
seriously.
a he-art.
Oh, it's locked.
All right.
Wow.
So we got Henry James here. And Bernard Shaw. As most people will know, and I think we've mentioned, Bernard Shaw was
multiple times,
nominalist and determinist and materialist philosopher. Debated Chesterton many times over his life. Also was very good friends with Chesterton. So Mr. Henry James, I don't know that he was a friend of Chesterton at all. What's that?
I don't remember him coming up before.
Yeah, so Henry James was an author, and he was kind of an experimental novelist. He wrote, nowadays, especially horrors are a thing that people take to, and so he had a very famous short story called "The Turn of the Screw," which was it was like a ghost story horror, where the person telling the story, it turns out, might be part of the horror itself. But anyway, Henry James was famous for overlapping and putting layers on things they said in his book. So he would say that a person had a certain motivation, and then that person would later on in the story would contradict their own motivation. They would act against it, and they would say there's something else going on, or where they thought that they intended X, but they did Y. And it was his works are oftentimes seen as this like interplay of in sort of impressionist motivations and psychological motivations of his characters, where he loved to include he loved for the reader to never be quite sure what was going on in the minds of his characters. And so he was, I think Chesterton right here is just referring to the fact that you can have someone that looks like a person, but their heart's not in the right place, so to speak. Obviously not, he doesn't mean that physically, but he means that, he's about to tell us what he means by that.
Okay. It feels like it's an uncharacteristically short paragraph for Chesterton, so it's just a setup, I guess. So I guess we'll just keep moving and we'll hear what he has to say, because this is longer.
Right. This is the
On
heart
the
of it.
heart in the right place. Yes. Okay.
The modern world is not evil. In some ways, the modern world is far too good. It is full of wild and wasted virtues. When a religious scheme is shattered, as Christianity was shattered at the Reformation, it is not merely the vices that are let loose. The vices are indeed let loose, and they wander and do damage. But the virtues are let loose also, and the virtues wander more wildly, and the virtues do more terrible damage. The modern world is full of the old Christian virtues gone mad. The virtues have gone mad because they have been isolated from each other and are wandering alone. Thus, some scientists care for truth, and their truth is pitiless. Thus, some humanitarians only care for pity, and their pity, I'm sorry to say, is often untruthful. For example, Mr. Blatchford attacks Christianity because he is mad on one Christian virtue, the merely mystical and almost irrational virtue of charity. He has a strange idea that he will make it easier to forgive sins by saying that there are no sins to forgive. Mr. Blatchford is not only an early Christian, he is the only early Christian who ought really to have been eaten by lions. For in his case, the pagan accusation is really true. His mercy would mean mere anarchy. He really is the enemy of the human race because he is so human. As the other extreme, we may take the acrid realist, who has deliberately killed in himself all human pleasure in happy tales or in the healing of the heart. Torquemada tortured people physically for the sake of moral truth. Zola tortured people morally for the sake of physical truth. But in Torquemada's time, there was at least a system that could to some extent make righteousness and peace kiss each other. Now they do not even bow. But a much stronger case than these two of truth and pity can be found in the remarkable case of the dislocation of humility.
All right. This is a rich paragraph. So
Yes.
He's going to go back to this theme, so it's worth repeating at the beginning, which is that the heart not being in the right place, which is what he started with, in which your Nine Inch Nails esque parody reflected, was that virtues are meant to come together in groups. It's a very interesting thing. We often talk about virtues. The Romans, just for an example, that's not even a Christian example, the Romans thought that there were four cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. But in order to be a complete man, you had to have them all. You had to. It wasn't enough to be, just the courageous man, but who was imprudent and intemperate and unjust. You had to have the virtues working together. And Chesterton's arguing the same thing. Now he goes at Mr. Blatchford pretty hard in this case, and so Blatchford is Robert Blatchford. He's a journalist. He had actually a pretty rough upbringing, but he ends up writing this pamphlet in the 1890s called Merry England, extolling how England used to be and arguing for socialism. So his whole argument is take it all down. And he was, by the way, very instrumental in making socialism popular to the English people. And the formation of the socialist political parties in England are almost all of them trace themselves back to his Blatchford's pamphlets, and especially this Merry England pamphlet. In much the same way that in American history, we often trace back the revolution itself to Thomas Paine's Common Sense, where he writes about how terrible the King of England is and all the things he's doing to America, and that was why we should go to war with England. And Robert Blatchford does a similar thing, but in a very much more British way, where he's arguing that Britain should become socialist. And Chesterton and Britain should become socialist because what he says is, Christianity is supposed to be about love, but look around you and all of the all of the abuses that people with power and money are doing to the lower classes. And so, is that really love? So obviously, Christianity's failed, and what we need to have is a structure essentially forced charity of love called socialism, where we forcibly take stuff from some people and give it to others, because that's the really loving thing to do. And so Chesterton is very hard on this position, and
Right.
funnily says that he should have been the one eaten. He's the only early Christian who ought to really have been eaten by lions. He's mocking the fact that Blatchford calls himself an early Christian. He says, I'm more Christian. I'm the way Christians were at the beginning, as was Blatchford's claim. And so anyway, he also name drops Torquemada, who most people, or a lot of people, will know. This is a Franciscan friar in the late 1400s, late 15th century. That was the first Grand Inquisitor in the Spanish Inquisition. So he's the face of villainy, of inquisitional villainy, especially following the Protestant Reformation. And then Zola is a funny French author who, Émile Zola was his name, where he actually went and he had to flee to England. He was a French journalist. Let's do this quickly. He's a French journalist that made himself most unpopular in France in this thing called the Dreyfus Affair, where French military officer of Jewish descent was basically trumped up on charges of selling French military secrets to the Germans. This is the late 1800s. And Zola was a journalist who basically breaks the law in journalism to force himself on trial so that he can bring out all the evidence that he says was buried as to why they were essentially unjustly treating Joseph Dreyfus, this officer. The long story short is that after many decades, Zola never gives up, and the French government tries to cover it up over and over again. But finally, after a couple of decades, everything Zola's correct. Dreyfus gets exonerated. Zola gets exonerated. But basically, he was like the Chinese water torture of the French journalist movement. Just
I don't think
putting
you can say that anymore.
Oh, I can't say that anymore?
I'm just kidding. I don't.
Sounds
bad.
The water torture. I mean, it was
He's
used
Irish
in many.
leaky pipe.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Mick water torture. That's right. But anyway, he was the gadfly that kept at it, and for the sake of physical truth, as Chesterton's pointing out, he tortured people morally. In other words, he never let them live down their crimes until the French government finally backed it down. So anyway, so Chesterton's point is that there's these two extremes of torturing people physically and torturing people morally. At least they were part of a system where you could achieve righteousness, in a sense. He's about to tell us that the modern system is totally different, and by its fake humility, much like Blatchford's fake charity, that the fake humility, or the humility taken to an extreme, results in something terrible. Anyway, sorry, that was a lot of historical stuff.
Yeah, I'm taking it all in. And I think just the general, what I carry from the last chapter into this is again, the theme of people have started to see life as a salad bar where you get to pick and choose what your worldview will consist of, and you throw stuff out. And so before they were doing that with kind of just the evidence of what, life. So they're throwing a lot of metaphysical things out or whatever, just making excuses for them. And now they're going salad bar on virtues and going, well, I like this one, don't like that one so much, so we'll go with this one. We'll go keep. I like charity. Well, let's stick with charity or whatever. And it's kind of another example of monomania, going monomaniacal on a virtue. Because who can argue with a virtue? It's good.
Yep, charity, giving people good things. So let's take everything from others and give it to everyone else. Charity for all.
Where do you hate the poor?
That's right.
So now he's actually going to argue against humility here.
I love Chesterton.
Here we go.
It is only with one aspect of humility that we are here concerned. Humility was largely meant as a restraint upon the arrogance and infinity of the appetite of man. He was always outstripping his mercies with his own newly invented needs. His very power of enjoyment destroyed half his joys. By asking for pleasure, he lost the chief pleasure. for the chief pleasure is surprise. Hence it became evident that if a man would make his world large, he must be always making himself small. Even the haughty visions, the tall cities, and the toppling pinnacles are the creations of humility. Giants that tread down forests like grass are the creations of humility. Towers that vanish upwards above the loneliest star are the creations of humility. For towers are not tall unless we look up at them, and giants are not giants unless they are larger than we. All this gigantesque imagination, which is perhaps the mightiest of the pleasures of man, is at bottom entirely humble. It is impossible without humility to enjoy anything, even pride.
Feels like you just keep going on that one.
Well, I do want to say one thing. I don't want to say
okay.
I love this reality. It's so true that when you must make yourself as large as everything around you in your own mind, then you lose pleasure of the things. Like the ability to be surprised, the ability to see yourself in right relation to the world, namely that of a small thing in relation to a large thing. It's such a key to satisfaction and to this humility. But now he's going to shift here into this new humility, and where modesty comes in. So modesty is the attitude, the humble attitude.
And for more on humility, listen to our first episode with Doug Knaple. It's a good one. There you go.
But what we suffer from today is humility in the wrong place. Modesty has moved from the organ of ambition. Modesty has settled upon the organ of conviction, where it was never meant to be. A man was meant to be doubtful about himself, but undoubting about the truth. This has been exactly reversed. Nowadays, the part of a man that a man does assert is exactly the part he ought not to assert himself. The part he doubts is exactly the part he ought not to doubt, the divine reason. Huxley preached a humility content to learn from nature, but the new skeptic is so humble that he doubts if he can even learn. Thus we should be wrong if we had said hastily that there's no humility typical of our time. The truth is that there is a real humility typical of our time, but it so happens that it is practically a more poisonous humility than the wildest prostrations of the ascetic. The old humility was a spur that prevented a man from stopping, not a nail in his boot that prevented him from going on. For the old humility made a man doubtful about his efforts, which might make him work harder. But the new humility makes a man doubtful about his aims, which will make him stop working altogether.
All right, help me out with understanding this. Modesty has moved from the organ of ambition. Modesty is settled upon the organ of conviction.
Yeah,
where it was never meant to be.
Yeah, which is, the next line is probably the best in this paragraph, in many paragraphs. A man was meant to be doubtful about himself, but undoubting about the truth. So now it's been reversed. Now we doubt the truth, but we do not doubt about ourselves.
We only trust
we're good enough.
All we can know is what we're perceiving.
Yep. And also, like, whatever you do, it's good enough. Like, it's just up to you to decide when to stop. It is the complete reverse. It is the complete reverse. The other line, the old humility was a spur that prevented a man from stopping, not a nail in his boot that prevented him from going on. For the old humility made a man doubtful about his efforts, which might make him work harder. So the old humility is the modesty about, like, have I done well enough? Have I, I've gone this far, but maybe I should go further. Maybe I should spur myself. Maybe what I have accomplished is not enough. That's the modesty part. Maybe I haven't reached the heights yet. I should keep pushing myself. That's the old humility. But the old humility wasn't modest about the fact that there was truth. There was a good thing that you could strive for. You knew what it was. Maybe you hadn't reached it yet. Maybe you weren't good enough at it yet. That was where the humility came up. but the thing itself was good and was always good, and you didn't doubt that. Now it's exactly the opposite. Now we're supposed to doubt that there is any truth that you can reach. Well, who knows? Like, who knows if it's best for homeless people to have a home or to live a drug-free life? Maybe it's better for them to just live in the squalor that they choose. That's maybe people that are completely addicted and destroying their own lives and the lives of people around them. Maybe they shouldn't be. They should just be left alone. Maybe you don't know what's best for them. Maybe you should just back off. And so it is a true reversal, and it's so excellent that Chesterton is putting it in the mode of humility, being in the wrong place. So we're supposed to have a humility about our own efforts, but not about the truth. And nowadays we have a humility about the truth. In other words, we don't know, is this the truth or is that the truth? Or is there a truth? There may not even be a truth. But about ourselves, you're supposed to always look out for number one. You're supposed to trust in yourself. You're supposed to be who you are and just be happy with who you are. That's the reversal, and that's where we've got it all wrong. Modern man.
Now, quickly for those who don't know, the ascetic. I didn't know this before I looked it up.
Okay, the ascetic is a person that denies themselves pleasure and good things in life for a higher purpose, spiritual.
Like
purpose.
A monk or something.
Yes, like a monk. Yes.
And then Huxley. He mentions Huxley.
Yeah, there are indeed a lot of Huxleys.
There's many Huxleys.
Yeah, I believe this is he doesn't elaborate, but I believe he's talking about Thomas Henry Huxley, who is the famous one that debated in Darwin on trial. He debated the truth or not truth in court of he also had some of the best mutton chops around. So if you can get a picture of him for our podcast, you need to. Yeah, they have some good ones. But so basically his argument for Darwinian evolution was a very interesting one. It didn't have a lot of the arrogance that today's evolutionary biologists will have in this. He essentially said in the debate, and he was judged by most people to have won the debate and made the case for Darwinism. But his essential argument was, we just have to follow the evidence. So if the evidence shows a gradualism, a slow change over time from one creature to another, then we have to have that humility in the face of the evidence to go with what it's showing us. And now there were some logical flaws in what the ultimate conclusion was, but Chesterton's right that he was very good in his argumentation because he took the position of humility and saying, look, it's not about like asserting that X or Y is the case. We just have to appeal to nature and see what she shows us is true. So I think that's the Huxley he's talking about.
And just to kind of, sorry, I know we were talking along here, but because in the last chapter, it seemed that he was talking about the greatness of mysticism and allowing for mystery. There's a part of me that hears him say this about humility and just knowing the truth and what the truth is. But there's also, does that contradict what he's saying about,
No. Yeah. Here's why. So it doesn't have to be that there's one truth. In other words, people of goodwill can disagree about what the truth is, but it's the very belief that there might not be a truth at all. That's the problem. That there's no ideal to strive for. Different people will have different ideals, and they'll come to different conclusions. But it doesn't change the fact that. So, for example, the conclusion that there is mystery in the world. What the particular mysteries are, you could find two people who take that idea very seriously, and they'll disagree on what some of those mysteries are. Chesterton doesn't have a problem with that. He has a problem with denying that there is an ideal, denying that you can even know any truth. And so it isn't that he thinks that you should just everyone should bow to the one answer. Now, he does believe there is one thing to believe, so to speak, about transcendence and the universe and man, and that's why he's writing this book, Orthodoxy. It's a Christian belief, but he doesn't. What he despises more is the idea that you can just say, "Oh well, there is no truth. It is no look. We should just stop striving for this. You think that you could come to truth, but I doubt that." So that's the modernist position that Chesterton is arguing against.
Okay.
So not a particular truth. He's no Torquemada. Torquemada had a very specific truth that he wanted everyone to adhere to, and he was willing to kill you if you didn't adhere to it. But there's a for Chesterton, it's the idea that there is truth, and if you deny that, then you're down a dark path, and a hopeless path, actually, because there's no reason. As he says, the new humility makes a man doubtful about his aims, which will make him stop working altogether.
Okay. Continuing on, not a very long paragraph here.
At any street corner we may meet a man who utters the frantic and blasphemous statement that he may be wrong. Every day one comes across somebody who says that of course his view may not be the right one. Of course his view must be the right one, or it is not his view. We are on the road to producing a race of men too mentally modest to believe in the multiplication table. We are in danger of seeing philosophers who doubt the law of gravity as being a mere fancy of their own. Scoffers of old time were too proud to be convinced, but these are too humble to be convinced. The meek do inherit the earth, but the modern skeptics are too meek even to claim their inheritance. It is exactly this intellectual helplessness which is our second problem.
Yeah, I've struggled with falling into agnostic thought and times in my life, and I think I have a weakness for just starting to go when I go too far down that hole. And the thing that always pulls me out is like it's just such a cop out. It's so like what then will I do, and who am I, and what am I if I just decide nothing can be known? It's a cop out, and it's wussy.
Right. And so would you say, I'm just going to put what you said in my own terms, what I'm hearing you say. Tell me where I've gone wrong if I have. When I hear you say that, I hear someone who is saying, at my core, even if I might doubt this or that or any particular issue, I just have a sense of disgust about the idea that I should doubt everything and do nothing and believe nothing. And this, what Chesterton calls this intellectual helplessness. There's kind of like a gut reaction against that as human beings.
I can't understand people that take a sort of, there's a lot of agnostics, they're a little prideful about it. Like they're kind of talking down to you, like it can't really be known, so therefore blah blah blah. And I really think, maybe like the entire, you can't take the whole package and fit it into your little brain, but we're meant to head in a direction,
right,
to the best of our ability.
Yeah, exactly, and we have this gut sense that that's right. It's that phrase by Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts. Have you heard that one before? So Theodore Roosevelt, it's one of his most famous phrases, and it relates directly. And it's funny because he's in politics right at the time that Chesterton's writing this book. And one of his most famous phrases is, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them a little better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. So it's the same idea, which is the cold and timid souls, those people that are, as you described, are a little snobbish, who explain to you how you can't know this or can't know that, or you're not sure about this. It inevitably leads, as Chesterton says, to that helplessness, that intellectual helplessness, which he says is our second problem. So this is the thing, like the intellectual views that unman us, that make us stop striving, that make us stop thinking that there's an ideal that we can work for. These are the problems.
Yeah, when you try to talk about ideals with our culture, it goes over their heads. Like I feel like that's the thing. You try to propose the idea that there's. What about the ideal when you talk about gay marriage or like adoption or any of these situations, single parenting? Like, well, there is an ideal, right? The ideal, like people just can't. They take it as offensive that you have an ideal. Like the word ideal is even offensive. Anyway, let's continue on.
The last chapter has been concerned only with the fact of observation, that what peril of morbidity there is for man comes rather from his reason than his imagination. It was not meant to attack the authority of reason. Rather, it is the ultimate purpose to defend it. For it needs defense. The whole modern world is at war with reason, and the tower already reels.
Another short one?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he's just, this is a transition between the first chapter and the second chapter. He's introducing a second chapter, and it's about the fact that he's going to fight this intellectual helplessness. First, it was, don't be morbid with your reason. Don't become the maniac, and think one thought only, and describe a very tiny circle that you're going to put your whole mind in, the whole world in. Don't do that. Also, don't think that there's nothing worth doing, and that you can't know the truth, and that we oughtn't to be knowing the truth and defending the truth. So that's what he's just telling us. He's sort of giving us an intro to this chapter.
Okay. All right. Well, this is going to be our final paragraph of this episode. There we go.
The sages, it is often said, can see no answer to the riddle of religion. But the trouble with our sages is not that they cannot see the answer. It is that they cannot even see the riddle. They are like children so stupid as to notice nothing paradoxical in the playful assertion that a door is not a door. The modern latitudinarians speak, for instance, about authority in religion not only as if there were no reason in it, but as if there had never been any reason for it. Apart from seeing its philosophical basis, they cannot even see its historical cause. Religious authority has often doubtless been oppressive or unreasonable, just as every legal system, and especially our present one, has been callous and full of a cruel apathy. It is rational to attack the police. Nay, it is glorious. But the modern critics of religious authority are like men who should attack the police without ever having heard of burglars. For there is a great and possible peril to the human mind, a peril as practical as burglary. Against it, religious authority was reared, rightly or wrongly, as a barrier. And against it, something certainly must be reared as a barrier if our race is to avoid ruin.
Well, that's going back to Chesterton's Gate a little bit there.
It is, and it's a cliffhanger because he just says that all of religious authority was reared up against this great and possible peril to the human mind. But we've stopped right before he tells us what that great and possible peril to the human mind is, which we can find out.
For you.
Is in the next sentence, but we're stopping there. But yeah, this is what he's doing is he's pointing out, like, you can dislike religious authority if you like, or if you don't like it, rather. But don't be an idiot and say that there was never any historical purpose for religious authority. There was, whenever people do something like like take to the principles of a religion, they do so for a reason. And often it's the reason is like the police, they give someone, so the police are people that we give the power to use force above and beyond, to enforce laws above and beyond other citizens. And that is an abusable power. And I guess Chesterton's going a little BLM on this in this last paragraph, but I mean, not really, of course, but he's pointing out that you can criticize if the police go too far, but don't be stupid enough to say there's no purpose for the police. Of course, there's a purpose for the police. Of course, there's a purpose for religious authority, regardless of which particular one you're dealing with. It's popular nowadays to bring up things like they're coming out with a new animated show about Aztec Batman, and so it's the Joker and other Batman villains are all conquistadors. They're Spanish conquistadors, and Batman is defending the poor Aztec people from the Spanish conquistadors.
Then they have to change his name, Bruce Wayne.
I'm not sure,
Bruno, something.
But so here's an example. Like, in my personal opinion, that's a truly stupid idea, because of course the Aztec government and religious authority was one of the most blatantly evil in the history of the world that we've ever encountered, because the religious authority literally has as one of its primary jobs the cutting out of human hearts so that the sun can rise every day, which is a horrific and idiotic religious authority. But just because I think that that's true of the priests of Tenochtitlan doesn't mean that I think that there's no purpose for religious authority. The people of the Aztec people installed this authority and developed this authority for a reason, and that was they had a sense of the divine, and they went terribly wrong in what the divine was asking of them. But the purpose of having a religious authority was not a bad one.
Apocalypto, watch it.
Oh yeah, I love it. That's
one of the greatest.
That's one of the coolest.
Man.
That is one of the best movies.
Seriously though, if you haven't seen Apocalypto, get some cigars, some bros, watch it.
And
it's all subtitles, but it's
all subtitles. Exactly. It's one of Mel Gibson's best.
It's a legit
works.
man movie. It's so good, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been fun here.
Speaking of,
we'll be moving on to part 2 of the Suicide of Thought next week.
This is
I hope you enjoy that when we get to it.
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine. It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to chestertonsgateway@gmail.com. And join us on Patreon, where only the true Chestertonians can be found. Goodbye.
That's right. Like this is like playing a club in the Matrix. Terrible.
Phrases. This is great.
Alright. Until next time. Don't miss that Patreon. Join us at Patreon, obviously.
Join us.
Join us.
Attack the police, forget the burglars. A door is not a door.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Poison.
It all makes sense now.